Getzlaf out, it just really showed to me how much Raquel and Perry rely on guys like Ryan Getzlaf to carry this team offensively against such a top-end team in the Jets. Any sort of offense would help, be it from a guy who's never played an NHL game if he has a chance to do it. As you just said, Donato showed that he was capable in Boston. Do you foresee that? I know you said maybe, but do you foresee a guy like Carlisle, who doesn't really like young guys, it seems like, is going to trust a guy like Troy Terry when this team's not solidified in the playoff position?
Yeah, it's tough because we've seen the Ducks call up a lot of young guys before, but it's always been in a situation where they've either clinched or they're pretty much in a situation like the Jets are now, where they haven't clinched, but they're going to get in. And we haven't seen the Ducks in this position in a long time, so it would be interesting. I think it's kind of different in the fact that normally we'd see a lot of guys come up in San Diego or Norfolk at the time. We're not in a playoff spot. We'd see a lot of guys get called up and just given some shots. I don't see that this year, at least with the AHL. The Troy Terry one is an interesting situation because I think they believe he's ready to step into the NHL and make a difference. And everybody likes to look around the league and look at some similar players. And of course, we're talking about Ryan Donato again and seeing how successful he's been with Boston right off the bat. That helps Troy Terry's case in getting in the lineup with the Ducks. You talked about Getzlaf and him not being in the lineup, how it kind of shows that how much Raquel and Perry rely on him. I agree with that. I think it's a small sample size, of course, against a very good Winnipeg Jets team, but it's expected. I mean, Ryan Getzlaf is the Ducks' best player. We talk about all the time how he can slow down the game and control the offense, and it makes things a lot easier for Corey Perry and Rickard Raquel. And I was honestly disappointed how none of them really looked like they were in the game tonight. And I mean, that was the same for pretty much everybody but John Gibson. But when you have your best player out of the lineup, you expect those guys to step up and try and control the play. And they didn't. I didn't notice Rickard Raquel much at all. Perry at times, but really not enough when you're looking for somebody to step up in his absence.
No, that's true, man. I'd have to absolutely agree with you there. And just to comment on Chase Perez in our chat, he said Fowler makes the right choice on the ice 9 out of 10 times. He made a mistake. Everyone does. I agree with that, and that's why I said I want to beat him up too much. Yeah. Obviously, he overplayed it trying to create offense. Can't kill the guy on there. It was just noticeable for me that his defensive pairing just kind of had the trouble tonight. And like you said, though, this top six for Winnipeg is just so damn good. They're going to burn just about everybody, and they have this NHL season. So throw this one away, you think? And head and look over to Edmonton? Is that kind of where you're thinking here? I feel like that might be the idea in the Anaheim locker room because they were severely outplayed. Why not just throw the tape away and get to work and focus on Sunday?
I think so. I think if it was against maybe a worse team, you would say, hey, we got to look into this a little bit more. And it doesn't mean they shouldn't, but Winnipeg's just on another level. And we've talked about how the elite teams just seem to be that one step or two steps above the Ducks. And I don't think they should look too hard into this one. You didn't have your best player, you didn't have your captain. You're playing one of the better teams in the National Hockey League. Throw it away. Be happy you got a point. Go into Edmonton and really look to rebound from what was a bad game. And it should be a must-win, despite Connor McDavid playing out of his mind. He just wills the Oilers to wins when it doesn't look like they should win games. He had a 4-point night the other night in a win that the Oilers had. So you know that they're going to have to be wary of Connor McDavid. But it has to be a must-win, especially with how disappointing this game is and how disappointing the game against the Flames, despite it being a win. The Ducks were just on the opposite end of shot attempts, bleeding shot attempts throughout the entire game. They didn't really have any momentum in either game. So they're going to have to look to turn that around because some things were looking up. I mean, the New Jersey game was arguably their best game of the season, where they really didn't have a time where they turned it off. They dominated the entire game. And then we went into Calgary and Winnipeg, and it's just the complete opposite.
Do you feel like this is on the coaching staff? I mean, I know that they don't lace them up and skate. Yeah. You got to make your players do what you're telling them to do, whatever instruction you're giving. So I know there's some fault in the players, obviously, but do you feel like this pretty much falls on Randy Carlisle and his staff to try to figure out what's going on here, watch game tape, do something with how they're structuring their defense or how they're structuring the flow from defense to offense? Is that something you think that needs to be looked at, or are these just a couple of clunker games that we need to move on from?
I think it's a mix of both. I think it's definitely something I have to look at because I think the difference here on the road than at home is the Ducks weren't able to get the matchups that they wanted. And you look at that New Jersey game, they were really able to get all the favorable matches, of course, because they get the last change. So they're able to put whoever else they want over the boards to match up with the New Jersey players. In this one, the Jets got all the matchups they could have wanted, especially in the Calgary game as well. You had Calgary getting all the favorable matchups. Didn't work out for them in that game, luckily for the Ducks. But I think it's a mix of that and then Carlisle not really adjusting to that and trying to change things up in the game and really outcoach Paul Maurice. You didn't see any of that. He just kind of let it happen. He just threw Fowler and Montour out there against Scheifele and Wheeler and said, well, I hope you guys can do something because we need somebody needs to shut them down the way they're playing. And yeah, I mean, it's tough because I don't want to put all the blame on Carlisle and the coaching staff. I feel like they're partly to blame. Of course, the players are again. But like you already said, I kind of just want to throw this game out the window because you had no Getzlaf. It's against one of the better teams. I want to see how they do against Edmonton and Vancouver on the rest of this road trip and see if it continues to be a problem.
I'd agree with you on that. You have no Getzlaf, and as Chase pointed out in our chat, we also had no Josh Manson still, which would kind of segue us into this next part here. The Manson update has come around. He's been seen with skates on, Eddie. There's a chance. There's something brewing in the Ducks locker room that is saying that Manson may play soon. He was seen in practice, correct?
Yes, he was hitting the ice at practice. The Ducks have a CBA day off tomorrow, so Randy Carlisle said he'll see how Manson does over the next 24 to 48 hours to see if he's ready to go in Edmonton, which I think is a good sign because you'd assume if he's not ready to go in Edmonton or if they're even considering for the game, he's probably fully ready to go against Vancouver at the latest.
That's all good news. Got to ask you about him. There's been a lot of talk around the league, especially early on, that, because Manson was putting up some offensive numbers, albeit a lot of them, as people were saying, and correctly so. They were second assists. But there are points nonetheless, meaning he's driving offensive play when he's on the ice. Is he one of the most underrated defensemen in the NHL right now?
Yeah, I feel like it. I mean, I would have to dig deeper into some different guys, but just off the top of my head, I feel like he's definitely one of the guys that has to be an underrated guy, and not just offensively, but just in his overall game. I mean, his offense has jumped up this year. Of course, a lot of it is just some noise and secondary assists, but that means he's still at least contributing to the offense. Of course, right before he went out of the lineup, he picked up an assist in the last game against New Jersey. So I got to say so. I think it's worth digging into a little bit deeper, and it's maybe something we can dive into for another show where we can really bring up some other names of some guys who are underrated. But he has to be in that discussion.
No, I agree with you, man. I feel like he's just a guy who's quietly having himself a great start to his career. He's got a lot of years ahead of him. He's a huge piece on this Anaheim blue line, and he's going to be for years to come as he just signed that deal that kicks in next year. I would definitely go with the fact that he's underrated. He doesn't get talked about enough, and he's also that guy on the blue line that will step up and who's mobile. He has no problem dropping the gloves from time to time too. He's got that nastiness streak in him, like his dad, Dave Manson.
Yeah.
I love that type of player. I think it's just a good fit for the system. But the fact that he's mobile just makes the biggest difference in the world because you got guys like Bosch and Bieksa who have no problem stepping up, making a hit, and making a play. And, we all know Bieksa can fight. We love his Superman punch. But I feel like just having a guy who can do that but also be mobile and have the offensive talent is just an added bonus and really makes him impressive. That he's just flying under the radar is kind of funny. But then again, so is John Gibson, and he's having the performance of his career this season. So no surprise that these guys don't get enough attention. I kind of want to hit the chat for a second, if that's cool with you.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up what Matthew Bernier asked in our chat. He asked about almost 30 minutes ago. He said, what was the most disappointed point of the game for you guys? What was your most disappointing point of the game, Eddie?
The entire game was just awful from the beginning. So it's hard. It's hard to
just
pick
the
one.
Whole thing.
It's really hard to pick one because the Ducks were just lackluster throughout the entire game. But I have to go with the second goal by the Jets. Just the poor play from Fowler and Montour together that led to that goal. It felt like it was always coming the way the Jets were playing, but I felt like it could have been avoidable. And the Ducks, if they had held on and continued the same way, and of course things could have gone different if it stayed at 1-1, but You look at it if it continued like that, that Ritchie goal is essentially a goal that puts you ahead. And really, the Ducks beat themselves on that goal. The Jets didn't really have to do much. Fowler got out of position and got dangled by Wheeler, and it's essentially a tap-in for Scheifele. So I think that would probably be the most disappointing point of the game for me.
For me, would be the shot share. What I mean by that is the Corsi for and against in this game, just as overall. 83 attempts on net for the Jets. 83 attempts on net to the Ducks, 35. That's just got to be the nastiest stat of the night. And the fact that John Gibson finishes with a .929 save percentage just shows you what kind of night he was facing and how good of a performance he had. Another question in the chat is Quacking Steve says, Dallas blows a 2-0 lead, as you said earlier, Eddie, and losing regulation. Are the Ducks getting lucky at the right time? I would say so. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, tonight for sure. And the Ducks got lucky to get that 1 point. Then you also get lucky that Dallas doesn't pick up a point on you. But then you go back to last night, you have LA blowing out Colorado. I think it was 7-2, and picking up points there. Where against a Colorado team where you were hoping that they would have probably stole some points from LA. But again, that's in that game. Whoever wins that game, the Ducks kind of win and lose because they picked up some points on Colorado, which now allows them, for the time being, to be in the first wildcard spot, which is obviously 10 times better than being in the second wildcard spot and having to face Nashville. And you also had San Jose winning in overtime against Vegas last night. So they're picking up some luck tonight. I think last night they were unlucky. But you can't rely on other teams to get the job done for you. The Ducks have to continue to win games against teams they should be beating, especially these next two games. You can kind of write this one off, like we had said, being it against a team as good as the Jets. But there's no excuse if you go out and you have another game like this against the Oilers or against the Canucks. Those are games you have to win, you have to play well, and you have to pick up 2 points.
I agree with you 100%. Gordon Bombay, the ever-present person in our chat, throws the question out. Would you extrapolate this game into a 7-game series, or do you think Anaheim's experience plus the abilities of Manson and Getzlaf equalize in a playoff situation? You can take the crack at that one.
I gotta read this question again. Right. Yeah, I mean, I think with Manson and Getzlaf, I think it does equalize it out a bit. I would still think the Jets have the edge. I just think they have the better team. I think the goaltending is relatively equal. John Gibson and Hellebuck are both great, young, and I'm sure you're going to mention American goaltenders. So
absolutely, sir. I'll take that every night.
Yeah, I think it's pretty even there. I think the Ducks might take a slight edge in the blue line, although the bottom pairing for Winnipeg is a lot better than the bottom pairing for Anaheim.
How dare you talk about Holzer that way?
Come on, man. I mean, they've got some flaws in Winnipeg on their blue line as well. But when you're icing Boschman and Holzer and BX on a regular basis when they're in the lineup, there's definitely an issue there. I think where Winnipeg wins is that top six and really just the depth and forward they have all together, and they've had guys step up the entire season. So I think that's where they take the edge, but it definitely equalizes out. I mean, we're talking about how underrated Josh Manson is. He's a huge part to this top four on the blue line, and he's really Hampus Lindholm's right-hand man. And for Hampus Lindholm not to have him, it's definitely difficult. And for the Ducks to not have Getzlaf, it completely changes up the way they approach their offense. I mean, their offense was anemic tonight, other than the couple chances they had, and a lot of that is due to Ryan Getzlaf not being in the lineup. I think they have a better chance with both in the team, but I think Winnipeg's just on another level. And I hate saying that because I do have a lot of faith in this Ducks team to make some noise if they get into the playoffs just because of the guys they have and the play of John Gibson. But, you know, Winnipeg proved tonight they're on a whole nother level, even with Getzlaf and Manson on the lineup. The
Ducks are just a funny team in 2018 so far. They came out of the gates into the new year and had an outstanding record and were one of the hottest teams, you know, coming out of the Christmas break. And something, I don't know what it was, has changed recently. And I feel like sometimes you just don't have it all to give every night. And, you know, like you said, it might be a mix of both. Maybe they're just having a bad game, plus this Jets team's dominant. I agree with you, though. I think this Ducks team getting into the playoffs could be dangerous. I mean, they have world-class goaltending. They have a great and